Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to the channel. This video is going to be like a secrets that I wish I knew before I started gardening. Why am I making this video? Because these are the kind of videos that get views. You search gardening on YouTube and the top ones say garden secrets. I'm not really big into hype and sensationalism when it comes to garden, but I thought I would show you guys some of the things that I learned over, the course of the last 10 years gardening, and they helped me and they might help you too. So let's get right on into it. The first one, of course, starts with seed starting. For me, seed starting was one of the hardest things to master because, there's so many variables that go into it. Not only that, most of the information you get on the internet, has to do with, oh, you've got to buy grow lights and you've got to buy this and you've got to buy this and blah, 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 blah. And if you're just starting out or if you don't have the means to buy that stuff, it's really difficult and frustrating because, you're trying to kind of fashion a way to do it without spending a lot of money because you're on a really tight budget and you can't afford the grow lights and you can't afford the seed trays and all of that stuff. But there are options when it comes to seed starting that, they just are total game changers. And not everybody always talks about them. So the first one I want to talk about personally is soil blocking. Soil blocking is relatively new to me, and I'll admit it took me a while to, kind of become a believer in it. You will need some materials for soil blocking. You definitely need a potting tray. This green potting tray, just made life so much easier. And you do still need trays, but you can reuse these every single year. So there is a little bit of an investment when it comes to this. I like to use these soil blockers because they are so easy to transplant into the yard, when the time comes. Now, I should note, I don't use grow lights with these soil blockers. I use kind of a low tunnel method to start my seeds. It's kind of like a mock-up of winter sowing, which I'm going to talk about in a second. I'm really passionate about winter sowing also, especially if you're a beginner. I'm going to make a video about how I start seeds with this low tunnel probably next spring when I start doing it. So be on the lookout for that. And if you're watching this video like way in the future, there's probably already a video for it on my channel. Just take a look at my channel. You might find it. Anyway, soil blockers, totally easy once you buy the actual equipment that you need. It doesn't cost after the initial, buying the things you need, which is nice. Don't really have to worry about buying new trays. These trays seem really sturdy. They're going to last me a long time, all that good stuff. After soil blocking, I want to talk about winter sowing. Now, the winter sowing method is a big deal. I discovered it a couple years ago. I saw it online. I said, I have to try that because, there are seeds that I'm having trouble germinating. And I just don't know what to do. I definitely recommend winter sowing for beginners. Winter sowing was the first time I actually had just a lot of success in the yard. So basically what you do, you find whatever type of seed that you want to grow. You find out a little bit about, its growth habits and what kind of weather it can tolerate. Can it tolerate cold? That kind of thing. And you sow them into milk jugs. If you want to learn more about winter sowing, you can just go to my channel, go to the search bar, type winter sowing. I have tons of videos about it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Basically, you start your seeds outside in recycled containers. These can be, soda bottles, milk jugs, I think work the best because they're a little bit bigger. You start them outside. There's no grow lights, no hardening off, no anything except for, you have to separate them at transplant time. But this was it made such a difference for me. And, even though I've kind of moved on to using soil blocks, because it's difficult to start a lot of winter sowing containers if you want to plant, a big planting. And that's pretty much the main reason I moved on to using soil blocks instead. But these work so great, especially if you have a small yard or a small garden, or you want to start perennial plants. The whole process of cold stratification is done for you. There are just so many positives to the winter sowing method, and I think if you're a beginner gardener, you live in a climate that, fluctuates between warm and cold, you have like an actual winter, you might want to give it a try because it might work great for you. The next thing that I wish I would have known when I first started gardening is that you don't have to be restricted by what you see online or what you see in person. I know where I live, when you see people's gardens, they're very much in single rows. They're one plant next to one plant next to one plant. Or online you might see, you know, like a square foot garden with proper spacing or that kind of thing. But my thing is, you can actually plant stuff a lot closer than you think. If you have a healthy soil and, you know, enough nutrients, enough water to go around, if you have a small yard but want to have a lot of stuff growing in it, you really can just squeeze a lot of food in there. And in the beginning, I was really afraid to experiment and, you know, plant a lot of stuff because it's like, I can't plant this stuff this close together. Is that allowed? But once I started actually doing that and, you know, getting these really great harvests from this small space, my garden's only like 20 foot by 20 foot. And I say only, and I realize a lot of people have a lot smaller gardens than that, and a lot of people have a lot bigger. It's all, you know, perspective, which is... Anyway, you can get some really, really amazing harvests in such a tiny space. I just used this intensive method where, you know, my beds are about 4 foot wide. And depending on what I'm planting, the spacing is, you know, pretty close. Things like beans, I only space them 3 inches apart. Things like tomatoes, I space 9 inches apart. But due to the row, it's just so thick. And yes, there are downsides to it. It gets really hard to harvest, especially, you know, I mean, definitely, I wouldn't do it if somebody had mobility issues or something like that. But it's the right choice for me personally because I just like to cram as much stuff in there as possible and get some really nice harvests from it. The next thing I wish I would have known, I guess we'll call this number 4. Is this the 4th thing I said? Let's see. 4th thing I wish I would have known is that depending on what you're planting, there are very specific growing seasons for them and, you know, getting them to thrive. The first year I gardened, I planted peas and I planted them in May. They didn't even germinate. They didn't do great because peas are cool season crops. I live in Kentucky. It's not really cool in May. What I should have done is plant the peas out, you know, March 1st when the weather was still, you know, what I would consider pretty cold here. The same goes with flowers. There are warm season flowers and there are cool season flowers. Things like poppies don't do well here in the summer, but if I plant them in the fall, next spring they'll be absolutely beautiful. There are so many hardy annual flowers that are easy to grow from seed and they're gorgeous, but nobody told me about them because I had no clue, because nobody was talking about, hey, actually that's a hardy annual. You could, you know, plant that in the fall and overwinter it. That'll work great. You know, nobody ever told me that. So, I thought that was only something that, you know, people in the deep south could do. I didn't know I could do it too. Things like chamomile overwinter great. It's just, I wish I would have had more knowledge of the seasons and how when you plant things can affect the overall abundance of the crop you get. And that's really one of the main reasons I talk so much about hardy annuals and season extension and overwintering things, because it really does just make a huge difference. Huge difference. Amazing difference. So that's really about it for this video. I know it's not very many secrets, but I don't think these are really secrets. I don't think they're secrets in gardening. I don't know. I hope that they were somehow helpful. I'm not quite sure if they were. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them down in the comments. I'd love to hear about them, try to answer them, all that good stuff. Or if you have any helpful tips, or what was a secret that you really wish you would have known before you started gardening. I'd love to hear them. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you making new videos on the regular, trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I don't think that's gonna happen, but we'll try our best. Share it with a friend, all that good stuff. I hope y'all are having a great day, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.